All right, guys. Today we are joined by our guest, Carolyn Coal, who is a tenured professor here at Cal State Fullerton in the Communications Department, as well as the writer and director of a new softball documentary titled Getting on Base. The film gives viewers a unique glance into the world of women's softball and portrays the talent, skill, dedication, and challenges that come along with participating in this unique sport. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Carolyn. So my first question I have for you is, what compelled you to make Getting on Base?
Yeah, so I grew up an athlete. I always enjoyed sports. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I was the first girl in the all-boys Little League team. So I kind of early on learned the challenges of what it's like to be an all-girl on the only girl on an all-boys team, and a lot of the parents yelling, "It's a girl," if I'd strike out and stuff like that. So I kind of understood that at an early age. I went to Penn State. I was very involved in sports. In high school, I threw javelin. And moved out to California, like a lot of people, to work in the industry. I worked in advertising for a long time. I've done music videos. I've worked on television shows. I was invited to do a class here, and that sort of got addicted to teaching life and ended up a few years here in Cal State Fullerton. So that's a little bit about my background, about how I just started the film. I've been... As a college professor, I've been concerned about our female athletes here, especially one day when I was at our stadium. And for people who don't know, our stadiums are kind of side by side, right? So when you're standing there, you can watch both teams. You watch baseball and softball. And it occurred to me that our baseball players, have the opportunity to go off to the MLB, and they could sign big contracts. And many of our players have over the years. In the softball side, I realized that most of the players there, they're great athletes, would be ending their career at the end of college. And I wondered about that, and I thought that addressed something larger about women's sports. So I decided to kind of get involved and reached out to Titan Athletics and asked if I could embed myself with the softball team and followed them for a year. And of course, that led to other interviews with scholars and academics, and started to build together a story that I thought would really bring to light their determination, their dedication, their athleticism, their passion that the female athlete has, and also kind of look at female sports at large.
Yeah, thank you. And then I know you already touched upon it a little bit, like talking about going around and being able to follow them, but would you be able to tell me a little bit more about the process of making the film, and what was it like being embedded part of the team?
Yeah, so filmmaking, especially as an independent individual, this is my fourth documentary, and a lot of what documentaries can be is like you and a few cameras. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what started with this. I ended up inviting several students to work on it with me, but I reached out to Titan Athletics at the time. Steve DiTolo was the athletic director, and he was very excited about it. Mm-hmm. And we were about to sign our contracts with ESPN+, so he was kind of wondering if this would be something that we could use. Although it's an independent project, would it be something that we'd want to showcase our talent with? I reached out to Kelly Ford, now our former softball coach, and she was also very excited about the idea. And I kind of just jumped in feet first. I picked up a bunch of GoPros and a few other type of cameras. I introduced myself to a few of the athletes I thought would be the ones we should follow, and then just started filming. The first game I filmed was at the Mary Nutter Classic, which is out in Palm Springs. And it was freezing cold, and it was in January, I think it was what it was, and it was a night game. So it was a long drive to get out there, and I was exhausted by the end of the evening, but what a fun time. I mean, I think what I always wonder for students is, are you doing something that you lose yourself in? And for me, filming and storytelling, building a story, I lose myself in that. So it was a really great evening, and I was very excited to continue from there. So ended up with a lot of games. I'll tell you a secret though, they won every game that I filmed. So I didn't have the option of cutting to a game that they lost to see that kind of, opposite side of what it's like, because they won, well, you've seen the film, they win several games. And so, that was kind of, I was wondering if I could try to pull that out. We did several of the interviews here in Titan TV. Yeah. So it took some time, partly because of, my overall, my personal schedule, my work schedule, family and things like that. I think the two things that are most challenging about filmmaking as an independent documentarian is time and money. Mm-hmm. So pulling that together, working with some outside in-kind donations through an editorial studio that supported the film. So it came together. I was done last November, but we decided to launch it in the spring here during softball season.
Of course. All right. Well, I mean, I feel like that was really good detail. And I think it was interesting that you talked about interviewing the players as well. I'll ask my own question here, because obviously this is something big for them. This is a unique experience that not many athletes do, especially female athletes as well, and not getting the recognition that a lot of them are very deserving of. So how was it, or what was it like being able to connect? I know you talked about some of the players you mentioned, but like I know there was a few players such as like Cheese or Soto as well, some of the players who've gone on to graduate now.
Right.
Could you just describe what it was like getting to connect with them?
Yeah, I think athletes are very structured in the way they approach their sport. And so they were a little bit like that at first. It was sort of like, oh, I've been asked to do this thing. I'm going to show up and be very formal with me. But over time, that kind of dropped, and they, I became sort of invisible to them. And I'm grateful for that, because I was able to get into very intimate situations in the dugout where they were upset or frustrated or excited and thrilled. I was able to sit with them and be sort of a fly on the wall is the expression people use. And that made it really possible for me to build out a bigger story, to show the behind the scenes of what it's like to be an athlete on a college team. There was over 100 hours of footage. So I've got a lot of great stuff from the athletes, from the coaches, from various games. It was hard to kind of pull from the edit, like which are the best things to use. But I feel like I was able to get connected to the athletes, and that as a viewer, you get to see, as time went on and they were more comfortable with me, you get to really see what it was like to be an athlete that season on the softball team.
Yeah, and then another question I have for you is how have like newer professional softball leagues, such as the women's professional fast pitch, have impacted the sport as a whole, as well as future trajectories for upcoming athletes?
So, I'm excited that women's sports has begun to really get traction. And it's a very layered and very complex question you're asking.
Yeah.
But to kind of simplify it in some ways, a big part of sports is broadcast, right? And one of the experts we spoke to, a woman named Cheryl Koki, who's done a 30-year study about the way women's sports have been observed in the mass media, specifically sports media. There's a relationship between supply and demand. Yeah. So while the media might be supplying a certain amount of sports, we won't know from demand because they're giving us what they're giving us, right? So I'm sure you remember from some basic econ class, which I probably failed. I'm not good at math, but that's when I became a storyteller and a filmmaker. So that's a big part of it, is broadcast deals. So what we're seeing are more broadcast networks picking up women's sports. So that's great, because we can see more women's sports, right? The other side of that is pay. And there's a pay gap for women, unfortunately, across almost every career you can think of. So what you hope is that the pay will start to rise. So the USA softball is a huge organization. Those athletes work for free. The National Fast Pitch that you're referring to, I actually just checked it recently to make sure I was on track. You can earn a good contract there, but it's a few-week season. It's only several weeks. And the average is between $3,000 and $10,000 for that period of time, right? The Athletes Unlimited, which has 3 different sports. I think they're including a 4th one coming up. But for their softball team, it's a 6-week season. And the cap on that is around $45,000. So when you're talking about working for 6 weeks out of a year, could you support your family, your partner, yourself even on $45,000 a year in our current economy? So when we look at that, even when you compare Caitlin Clark's recruitment when she got into basketball, the amount of money she was making versus the amount of money that, say, Bronny James was making the same year he was recruited. So this pay gap is a really unfortunate reality that I think needs to be looked at. We need allies to think about that. We need more broadcast deal. We need people like us to watch these sports, to ask your local networks to put them on TV so that we can, see more, that sort of build up that supply and demand. Yeah,
and I think this actually perfectly leads, because you were talking about the gap, the wealth disparity gap that is across men's and women's leagues, especially for softball as well. So in your opinion, do you believe it's possible for men's and women's sports to become relatively equal across the board, whether that's in revenue, whether it's in viewership or pay?
So I think that in an ideal world, that would happen. Do I see that happening in the next 5 years? Unfortunately, no, I don't. I think this is going to take a long time. One of the quotes that really struck me from the film was a woman who's from the UK who has an organization that supports women's sports. And what she said is, when you think about sports, they were invented by men, for men to play, right? And so women couldn't really break into sports for quite a long time. It was seen as unfeminine. It was seen, they were worried that we wouldn't be able to reproduce, have children, because we would wreck our bodies somehow. I mean, there was all these barriers to getting involved in sports. And yet women have competed and played with or without money or support or any of that kind of stuff, because everyone loves sports. If you're an athlete, you're an athlete, right?
Yeah.
So could that be in a perfect world one day? Yes, I would love to see that. But we would have to see some major shifts in viewership, in broadcast, in people taking the time to buy a box seat at any one of the basketball events. We need more corporate sponsors. We need, one of the things that the film talks about is we need men to step up. We need men to say, male athletes who are making in the millions to say, I want to see equality across the WNBA and the NBA. I want to see equality. And while baseball and softball are not identical, they're diamond sports, right?
Exactly.
That's how we set things up in the NCAA, right? Our baseball and our softball have to be seen through that lens, through the NCAA as equal, right? So I think in a perfect world someday, but I think it's going to be a while. I think if we all do something to make that happen, I think that'll work out someday.
Yeah, and obviously a big thing that your documentary highlighted was the fact that Title IX, when it was implemented, I believe it wasn't until 1975 where they actually started emphasizing it for softball and allowing women opportunities to have, but it really in essence didn't do much because the facilities that they were providing them, the uniforms, whether the appeal of it was very minimal. They just did the bare minimum to be able to do that. And so from that point on until now, have you yourself noticed any sort of major progress in women's sports, as whether it's in terms of facilities or just how it is marketed in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really lucky here, specific to softball, because Judy Garman was the woman who was the coach that initiated and developed our softball program, and she did some amazing things to get the softball program going here, from figuring out how to get a field on campus, to getting a second field, to working out the stadium, to getting bleachers, to having concession stands, to getting better uniforms, to getting buses as opposed to the cars and vans that they used to drive. I mean, that woman did everything. In fact, we're doing a special on her through our other department, Titan Sports Network, doing a special on her coming out, which I'm excited for people to see. But I think for individual college campuses, you do see growth. In speaking with Kelly Ford, she talked about how it's changed over the last 30 years. So since she went to Oklahoma and was on the softball team there. So of course, Oklahoma, very storied organization, frequently win the World Series. Part of the reason we have the World Series is because of Judy Garman. Judy Garman said, we want to call it the Softball World Series. And the guys were like, no, that's baseball. We're not going to. They had to sue to get the name World Series attached to the women's softball. So that the barriers, the hurdles that have had to go on. So yes, I think it's evolved a great deal. I mean, we have a new addition on the softball clubhouse. It's beautiful. I'm amazed. I'm thrilled. I actually tracked the building of it. So I'm glad for us here at Cal State Fullerton, we're a good destination for softball. I think there's a lot to be done in a lot of other places, but what Kelly talked about specifically was that athletes now have a voice. And I think women are speaking up. And I think when more and more people speak about the same subject, we begin to listen more. So hopefully that will continue that tide toward moving toward equality and in terms of facilities and money and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and I think that was a good point you bringing about women athletes speaking up as well, now that they're able to have a little bit more of a voice as the sport continues to grow, because obviously this film was a very big part as well, but I want to know what is next for this film, and how do you plan to continue advocating for equality in sports?
Sure, of course. I decided to skip a distribution route that had been offered to me through the people I work with my other documentaries. I really wanted the film to get out and get seen right away. So it was important for me to, through our various channels here, get it out on ESPN+. So that was very exciting to premiere there. We had outreach from organizations like Triple Crown Sports Network that wanted to air the film through their new network system. And they're a huge tournament organization. They do things across the United States and have a massive mailing list. In the first 10 days, we had almost 500 views on YouTube. So I think people are watching it. We've been invited to many watch parties at various women's sports bars, which are now growing and growing. I reached out to about 25 of them across the U.S., and most of them are open, but several are about to open, and they want to do a watch party coming in June. I think the film is going to have its own sort of grassroots effort. It's been great to see it grow and see it grow on social media platforms. And I think it would be really great to people to keep seeing those. So as a supporter of women's sports, I think writing a discussion guide for the film for college coaches, for travel ball leagues, for high school coaches. I think it would be really great for people to sit down and talk about it. It uses quotes from the film and talks about the various themes that the film approaches and ask questions about that and do activities around that. So I think that's definitely been supporting the film. And I always ask my students, I teach several classes every fall and spring, are you an athlete? Are you going to the events? Are you going to the games? Because I want to see us be involved. I think many campuses, Penn State inclusive, huge campuses, sports are here and the campus is here. And we have that here, and I want to see more and more faculty, staff, individuals, students, et cetera, getting involved in our sports teams and really supporting our community in that way.
All right, and then the last thing I have for you is for people who haven't been able to watch the film yet, where can they watch the film and show their support?
Sure, so Getting on Base Film, you can Google that, it's on YouTube. And it's also on Titan Sports Network. If you check out the Instagram, it's at Getting on Base. Okay. And there we have links that you can find any of the films. You can join us and be part of the connection and revolution we're trying to build.
All right, and then is there anything else that you would like to mention about your film here today?
I just really enjoyed the process. It is kind of my love letter to the sports community, especially female sports, especially softball. It was really a pleasure to be a part of it. I'm so thrilled we got it done and the athletes, get to see their stories. And looking forward to continuing to build content for the university and really highlight our athletes here.
All right, well, thank you very much, Carolyn. A big thank you again to Carolyn for coming on the show today. It was truly a pleasure being able to speak with you about your new film. Now let's transition over to the banter back at the desk.